too many years.
Okay, we're live now.
Okay.
I actually like this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, you've seen the Mac and PC ad with Windows, where Mac is putting down the
Yes.
the release of Windows 7. Oh, it's great. It's the two characters standing there, and don't worry, Windows 7 will fix all the problems that we had in Vista. And the Mac comes back with, I think I've heard that before.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they keep changing
go
its
through the
clothes, going
different-
all the way back to Windows 6.5.
I saw that one just the other day, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's
They don't seem to realize is all the problems in PCs are because you have freedom.
Right, yeah.
Vista would have been better if Microsoft had probably built their own hardware, but then it would have cost,
Yeah. It would,
Also,
it would be the
Mac
price
is
of a
cheap
Mac,
web.
exactly.
Yeah.
So okay, what I was gonna get into before Buck came and ruined the whole thing,
I didn't say that.
was design, right? And so like that's, I mean, you see that problem, and it was Paul who just said before he left that Microsoft always,
bells and whistles.
bells and
flashing,
whistles, and look at all our blinkies, right? When even Microsoft themselves, they have some horrible designs.
He
in
said
their-
that, not me.
Well, they do. I mean, look at the SharePoint database, right? I mean, primary key GUIDs, and I mean, it's
Yeah.
just.
I didn't wear glasses before I looked at the shareware.
So, and I've talked to them quite a few times about it, and I'm like, guys, isn't it embarrassing to be like a database vendor and not have databases any better than that? I mean, a lot of times it's so. I mean, design is like a really bad thing. When I see the vendors like Irwin at ER Studio, right? When they're well, we've got this brand new version of our data modeler. I'm like, really? Why? Who actually models data anymore? I mean, I'd love to be able to push that in an enterprise, but nobody does it.
Yeah. Well, do you remember the Bachman packages? Going back to the real
No,
early days?
I don't. You're like 70 years older than I am, so.
Actually, I'm only about 40 years older.
You're probably not
Oh,
even
God.
40 years older than I am. I'm almost 40.
Oh, okay, 20. Somewhere, I don't know. Okay. But no, back in the early days, there was a big push at one point for case tools, computer-assisted software engineering.
Okay.
And one of the ones was Bachman diagrams, and every enterprise bought a Bachman diagram thingy-bob from Mr. Bachman and put it on the shelf and stared at it, and maybe occasionally opened it.
Shelfware.
Shelfware.
Yes.
And a lot of the early stuff was like that. And frankly, it was a bitch to use. The interfaces were clumsy. Nobody knew the techniques anyway, even if they could get past the interface. And it just sort of died. And suddenly it became not as easy to type in your create table statements on the fly as it was to mousey click, drop, drag, blah blah blah. And they just sort of faded away. Well, hell, go back even further. Flowchart stuff. Everybody admitted when it was all over that they never did a flowchart before they wrote a program. They wrote a program, then put it through a flowchart generator. It would print out the flowchart for the documentation after the fact. And a lot of the case tools wound up that way. We'll code first, and then we'll push a button, and this case tool will spit out something I can put in the 3-ring binder that's yay thick that I'm required by DoD standards to produce.
And the thing is, if you're designing right, you're coding in your head, and you're working through all the problems, you're looking for all the things you're going to run into later. And you avoid all those traps, which is much easier to change. Go back to the data model. It's much easier to change the data model than it is to change the table. Certainly once there's data in the table, there's code attached to that table.
It's not a table, it's an entity.
I mean, if you look,
Not the table.
if you look at the really horrible designs, or in these, particularly in third-party tools, their UI has been changed like 15 times, but their databases don't change. It's really hard to change state.
Yeah.
Right? You've got that state in there. What are you going to do with it? Well, we're going to make some scripts to fix it. No, they just go, oh, it'd be too much trouble to do that. Let's just stick with what we got. And
Put a dancing bear in the corner.
I'm always really hard because I write for InfoWorld and I've reviewed a lot of software, and I'm always really hard on software packages on their databases because I find that most of their schemas just don't scale well at all, and they're telling us that you can do X number of boxes and so on. You can keep repositories on it, but when I actually fill those with data and then try to run it through the GUI, and y'all are data companies. Right? I mean, that's what I just don't understand. I mean, it's like when you interview DBAs and they don't know the difference between VAR and VARCAR, between CAR and VARCAR. It's like it's the first word of your title,
Yeah.
data. I don't understand how.
I'll give you one of my pet peeves. You go into a shop, and there's industry standards all over the place. You can get them on the internet now. In the old days when you had to buy them in hardback, keep 15 feet of loose leaf notebooks and all that, maybe there's an excuse for not doing your basic research. But, oh, well, we didn't bother with any industry standards or even think about looking them up. We just numbered everything sequentially, and that's our encoding scheme.
Yeah.
Yep. Check digit? Huh? Huh? What's the check digit? Do we need a new column for that? Really? Oh. How long has it been around? I mean, just, basic data things. And the inability, or the unwillingness, to even think about, get on the internet, for God's sakes.
There's no excuse anymore.
Yeah, a guy in Atlanta gave me a wonderful phrase I've been using, Google diligence. Have you done your Google diligence about your industry and your project?
I like that.
Yeah.
Come on in.
Beth,
Move out of the way.
Yeah, we're
for
on.
you.
Come on.
Was,
Site. That's my favorite site. Let me Google it for you.
Yeah.
Google
Oh,
that
did
for
you
or
guys
whatever.
see that little African guy on Jon Stewart a while back? He was the one. He lived in some remote African village when
he was
a kid,
amazing.
and he had lost. They had lost their school and everything, so he was just hanging out all day, right? And he saw a picture in an old magazine of a windmill, and built an electric generator out of a windmill for his hut, out of just scraps that they found lying around. And it was the most amazing thing. And they showed this circuit breaker that he had built that was just amazing. It was just in a box of like driftwood that he had found, right? Oh, God. And the funny thing is, he said, and he's like 21 now, he's just this perfectly polite little African guy, just so bad. Finally going back to school and everything. He goes, and I come over here, and they have that really perfect English, right?
Yes.
And I come over here to America, and I learn about this Google. He goes, and this is the most wonderful thing.
You can't buy advertising.
Where was Google? But where have you been keeping this Google all this time?
He actually
was
said
just
that it
such a
was
sweet
wonderful.
little guy. It was like,
And
oh my God.
And I get that level of wow because it hits me
Yeah,
about every
we
7
have it every
days
day, and I still have that level of wow.
of my God, how cool is this? Last night I was on web conference with my kids on my little tiny netbook and walked around the conference center and showed them. It's like, this just blows me away. We never even dreamed of this when I was.
You never told me you had kids.
Anyway, I concur.
So, 3 different design guys, now that we got rid of Buck. 3 different design
We love
guys.
you, Buck.
I want to hear from each one of you. And I mean, seriously, I want to have a real serious discussion about this. What steps
Yes.
do you guys take when you start designing something? You got something from scratch. Okay, so 2 different aspects of this, and I'll get to the other one in a minute, right? But 2 different aspects of this. The first one is when you start designing something from scratch, what do you do to design it? What steps do you take? And 2, what do you do when you inherit something that's really bad? Okay, so who wants to start? Lewis, you can start.
Well, see, these guys are consultants. They can anonymize the things they're saying. I've worked at the company.
Well, just in your experience. I mean,
12 years.
So,
You have friends with stories?
There you go.
but there are,
Tell us your friend.
but there are still ways that you personally think, as an MVP and a professional, that things should be done.
Well, yeah, I mean,
right?
initially you get the requirements, right? And you read the requirements and you go, these are terrible.
So you get the requirements from the user, you throw them away, and then what?
Well, it's not from the user. If
From
they
the
come from the
business.
user, okay, I accept that they're terrible.
Sure.
That's not what they do. They don't think through problems all the way. They say, I want a report that does this, and then you dig in later and you go, oh, they wanted this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And oh, we didn't even
They
think
can speak
about that.
Flemish. Yeah.
You know, and that's okay. That's what they do. They come up with new ideas and we implement them. But then the business type people who are supposed to analyze this and come up with specs, they write specs and they don't think about the problems either. And back when I was early in this, I used to have to do requirements, but somebody taught me
You
that
see, I don't think it's
they
good to
architects
just
don't
say,
do requirements.
do
So
specs. I actually spend more time working out use cases and saying, okay, what are the possible use cases and what data do you come back with? And I'll spend more time in Excel working out the use cases of
Wow.
this data goes in, this data comes out. I spend more time working that out. And then when I actually design, I'll admit, I do most of it in my head. I don't whiteboard it. I don't use an ER tool. I figure it out in my head. I'll use whiteboards just to communicate, and I do it all in scripts.
I'm
He's kind of a freak.
I'm
I
more
will
visual
do it.
than that.
Finish
I
stuff.
have to whiteboard because
Yeah, thinking boxes. and
I'm
everything.
visual too. It's just I can do it all in my head. Then I just download it to a script, and so I'll have one script that creates all of the tables and stored procedures. I'll have another script that enters the data for all those use cases, and another script with all the stored procedure calls to get the right answer. And I iterate through that until I have every use case with every right answer.
Oh, that's good.
That's good.
Now, I usually spend a lot of my time
People
with
that
the
sell tools and shiny things don't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is true.
Yeah, well, you missed it.
That's
We were
what
talking.
I really do.
We were talking about Microsoft before you came back, and that's one of their big shortcomings too. And I think it's really embarrassing for them as a data company, for them to have such horrendous database designs in some of their products. I think
Oh yeah.
that should be
This is
just.
sort of a theme for the week in a lot of the
I mean, that
discussion.
should just be that should be number one, right? I mean, we're data. We need to get this right. Ken Henderson, I used to talk to him a lot about that. He would show me some of the queries that like Management Studio and Enterprise Manager would, and I was just like, oh my God, are you insane?
They are
It's like-
C# developers. They
Yeah,
are not
exactly.
database people.
Exactly.
The SQL Server team doesn't know how to use SQL Server because they don't use it. They write C# or whatever code language it is.
Probably
to
C#
to develop.
Language du jour.
Yeah.
No, but I spend a lot of time just learning the language of a client. Tell me about the ways of your tribe. What does this word mean?
Tribal
Yeah.
knowledge.
Yeah, and
Right.
so okay, now I can read your specs. I now know the language. I
That's
know
true.
that Wait, that isn't just a funny abbreviation. That actually means something.
Yeah.
Ooh. And then you start getting to legal questions. Are you required to do this? Are you not required to do this? You give me an idea of what your environment is, what your language is, and now let's get to. Now that I can read it, now let's get to your specs.
So do you guys actually model databases? You probably don't. You don't.
That's my primary thing. Is database modeling.
Well, you just said that you didn't use it.
He doesn't use a tool.
I don't use a whiteboard or a data modeling tool.
Right, but that's
I
what I mean.
model
Do y'all
databases.
actually use modeling tools? Does anybody here?
I
actually-
do, and the reason I find his method so heinous is you don't end up with a document. I mean, the data model is the document. I put the descriptions of what's in there,
It
put the
becomes
rules
your data
it's going to
dictionary.
follow.
What is your data modeling tool of
I
choice?
use R1.
Everybody does, and everybody uses it.
It's
Would
wonderful.
you like Power Build?
ER Studio.
Okay.
It's the bomb. I love it.
You're
I want
really
more specific hands-on control. I
Okay,
want-
but you still need to
I
come up
want
with a
to say-
document that includes all that stuff
And
that
I will,
you
but
can
I
give to the
I
user.
can't extract it out and make it look pretty and